Hello, everybody, and welcome into the From the 50 Midweek Review presented by Bookit Sports. You can download the Bookit Sports app from the app today, and we're also brought to you by Aces Wild at 208 North Main Street in Columbia, Illinois. Go ahead and head on out to Aces Wild. Again, that is 208 North Main Street in Columbia, Illinois. Throw some darts, watch some ball, hang out, enjoy some time with the boys. So, my name is Zach Zook. I'll be your host. We got Nick Tolley, as always, in the greater St. Louis area, as I always like to give you the intro, Nick. And we're recording a little earlier this week because your boy is going to be headed out to the West Coast for the first time ever. I'm going to go to California. And so we got to get the show in now. So
for sure. Can't skip a week.
So if you're listening to this, I'm sure like Tom Brady will have been traded and Aaron Rodgers will have been traded. Maybe they'll have been traded for each other. But
let's be more realistic. Russell Wilson got traded and Deshaun Watson might be in jail.
Yeah. So I fully expect there to be fallout to come from us recording early, Nick. But we got no choice. So we're going to make this a little bit of a shorter show this week. Still two huge stories. We had the big blockbuster trade that happened on Zach Wilson's pro day. And I never really thought about this, just like kind of an aside. When you're having your pro day, like I guess you don't really care ultimately, like what happens, what the news cycle is like. But to be upstaged like he was with the trade, that's supposed to be kind of your day. Everybody's oohing and eyeing about you, and you're getting some positive press. Everybody's talking about your draft stock. And then to be upstaged by the trade, it's like, are you kind of pissed if you're Zach Wilson? Do you not care? Like, I never had thought about it from his perspective. I was like, why do these guys give a fuck? But like, when you think about it, like, I feel like if I was Zach Wilson, I'd be a little like peeved, like not that mad, but like slightly annoyed, mildly inconvenienced that the 49ers and the Dolphins and the Eagles just had to do this today.
He's not going to care unless the Jets don't draft him and then he falls below all these teams that just moved around.
Yeah. So I have never thought about it from a player's perspective like that before. And it just dawned on me. I was like, that kind of sucks if you're Zach Wilson. Like, it's like all these other guys get their pro days and you got the viral clips going on Twitter, which he did still have the one clip on Twitter. I don't know if you saw.
Oh, yeah, that
pretty
throw.
Insane.
Yeah.
But he was totally upstaged by the trade, which will be what we'll talk about here today. I also wanted to spend some time talking about the Deshaun Watson thing. I know we briefly mentioned it, last week, but I feel like it's been underreported because everybody's kind of just letting it play out. But I think that there's at least a very clear stance we could take on it. And that's kind of what I wanted to lead the show with. And then we'll get into the draft stuff, maybe the fallout from that and how the top 10 could shake out. So first thing with Deshaun is, to me, Tolley, it's very black and white. It's one of the biggest character assassinations that I've ever seen. And we golfed yesterday and we were talking about this. It's either one of the biggest character assassinations I've ever seen in the history of maybe not even just pro sports, but like, I don't know, in America, because he has been alleged by 20 plus people at this point.
There's now been 19 lawsuits filed as of this morning.
19 lawsuits. And so obviously it's something that you can't ignore at this point. And before, I saw that he had his little Notes app thing, which classic chef's kiss right there. Notes app statement is just the best on Twitter. So he had one of those, which obviously he was ahead of the stories. So everybody's like, what? Well, what is this? And then obviously then the stories break in the coming days. But I had no idea how many women it was that had accused him until recently, until I looked more into it. And I think the rest of us, part of the reason it's so underreported is because while none of us know Deshaun Watson personally, his image around the league is so positive. And I don't think anybody wants to believe that he's capable of doing something like this, I guess. Well, so that's part of the reason when it was the one woman, I don't want to say I didn't believe her. I just didn't know. Right. But I just thought, it could go one of two ways, but I don't think it's necessarily worth commenting on until more facts come out. Well, now that
And
we have 19 people.
And it first started out like it was okay, maybe he said some things and that's kind of where it was. And then the allegations got a lot more serious.
Yes.
These
And
last few
that's
days.
kind of where I'm getting to, is that it's getting to a point now where it cannot be ignored. I don't know what he's guilty of, but he's guilty of something.
Yeah. I mean,
and
obviously,
if it is a character assassination, which I would put at like -1% right now, the people that did it would be thrown in fucking prison, because it is like libel, slander, defamation, like at the highest order.
Right.
So I think that it's certainly gotten to a point where it's impossible to ignore. I read through the lawsuits and the witnesses' accounts, the victims' accounts, and it feels like something to me when I read it that the prosecution has been building for quite some time. I'm not talking years, but like, it's not as though one person came forward and then they decided to run with this. They've been building a case against Deshaun Watson on this for some time now, because when I read the ESPN article with the victims' testimonies, as it was laid out by the lawyer, very similar verbiage, very similar, acts being committed in these different cases. So to me, it's pretty clear that he's in some deep shit here.
Well, and then
And
today's story was that he's deleting Instagram messages and he's reached out to some of these women to try and make a settlement. And so which they obviously deny. His lawyer's like, he hasn't deleted a message since March 15th.
well, and some of
great.
the victims' accounts mention him having people sign NDAs, and it's to the point now where it's I don't know what he's guilty of. Again, none of us do, and it's not our job to judge or to figure it out. But he's guilty of something, at least in my opinion. I don't even think that's arguable at this point. So, and here's the one thing too. If what has been alleged is largely true, he should never play quarterback again. And it's just I can't be any more unequivocally clear about that. And I wanted to mention that on the podcast as we talk about the different nuances and the fallout of what it means for football, the sport we all love. If the guy is guilty of this, I never want to see his face again, except for like in some true crime, like prison show, like real life, locked up behind bars, rooming with Deshaun Watson.
Longest yard, real life.
It's very sad, regardless whether he's being character assassinated or he is guilty of sexual assault. Very, very sad for the victims, for him, who has had kind of it all, just signed a multi-million-dollar life-changing fuck you money extension last year, less than a year ago. And so now I want to move into the football side of it. I mean, we've gotten the moral side out of the way. I mean, I think any normal-minded human, like, I can't believe that you have to kind of say this, but in the year 2021, you do have to, make your position known, unfortunately. So now that we have the moral side, I want to talk about the football side. A trade for Deshaun Watson cannot happen.
No.
So everything is on pause. And what that I think means for other teams that were interested, I don't know how much interest there was on either side before this, because it felt like it had calmed down. And I kind of wonder if some of these GMs or front offices had a bug put in their ear that this was coming down the chute. And these teams vet, they do their research, and I bet that the front offices knew about this before it became public, and that's why you haven't heard many trade rumors to this point. That's the reason the Bears wanted Wilson instead of Watson. Watson's younger. He's got a higher ceiling. He has more years. He is on the extension, but you don't have to sign him to a new deal where you would Russ. It all kind of is starting to make sense now. And for the Texans, here's the reason I put the character assassination thing at like 0.001%. Who would be trying to character assassinate him? Not the NFL. and not the Texans. That was what I had heard. Well, maybe it's the Texans that are doing this. It is getting really weird over there, right? Maybe Jack Easterby, the preacher, has concocted some plan to ruin this kid's life. That doesn't make sense, though. And the reason being is because they're just damaging their most expensive asset.
You would have traded them to the Dolphins first.
I don't know what the perfect analogy would be in this situation, but if you had something of value that you didn't like anymore, but you could get a lot for it. Wonder if I have a really awesome, sick car. I got a Ferrari, a red Ferrari 2-door, and I don't like it. I just don't like the manual shift. I want something automatic. I can't fit my kid's car seat into the back, but I still want to get my value that I paid for it. I mean, this is a freaking awesome car. Somebody's going to want it. It's a Ferrari. Why would that'd be the equivalent of me going and smashing the windows out and blading the tires. It just doesn't make any sense. There's no stock in that to me. So I don't think that the Texans would want to character assassinate him at all either, because where I'm going with this is the Texans are the biggest football losers in this, beyond Deshaun Watson, obviously. The Texans are the ones that have the most to lose by this, because he's on their team. He's under a huge contract. And until this gets resolved, I don't think anything can happen. You can't, I guess you could cut and release him, but if you think that he's going to be then playing football again, you cut the asset for nothing. You don't get anything back in return, which if he's guilty of this, you're not getting anything back in return anyways. But if you're the Texans, it totally freezes you, I think. And then what do you do? Because you have no possible way to get a quarterback back. You have no possible way to get these assets back. That was the one thing, the one sliver of hope that Houston was holding on to, was that, okay, if we trade Deshaun Watson to the Dolphins or the Bears or the Jets, we're going to get a treasure trove of draft picks back. That has flown out the window like a bird as far as I'm concerned. It's not going to happen, at least not this year, because this is real. And I know it's been mentioned in reports, but I don't feel like I've seen it near to the degree that I feel like I should have seen it. And I think a lot of it's because people are letting due process play out. That's all well and good. But I think from the football side of it, people have not talked about the fallout for Houston and what they're going to do from this. I think Houston is a lock, a virtual lock to pick in the top 3 next year. I'd be shocked if they're not the first overall pick. Yeah. To be honest with you, I don't know. Well, again, we'll have to see how the draft shakes out, what team they end up putting on the field. I don't see how they win 2 games.
Unless this gets resolved and Deshaun plays.
Yeah, right. But I don't see how they win any more than a couple of games. And another thing that we will mention, and maybe we'll just segue to this now, Tolly, is even in the 17-game season that is assuredly coming down the pipe, I still don't see them winning more than a couple of games. So
what do you think is going through Nick Casario's head right now? He goes from the Patriots to this dumpster fire that the Texans are in right now, and just watches the Patriots spend all this money on all these guys that could be awesome.
I don't know. Yeah. Do you consider resignation if you're
pull the Josh McDaniels, just go back?
Yeah, dude, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go take some, front office role, be Bill's right-hand guy, help out with the cap, because they just signed a bunch of dudes. They're gonna need some cap management, and I am just gonna leave this behind. So I would not blame him for that at all. I don't think anybody would, to be honest. I don't even think it would hurt his career. Would you want to do that?
It might help it, because they'll be, all right, you're a smart guy. You can come on.
So let's transition to the 17-game season. It's happening. I don't know if it's official or not yet, but it's happening. And it has everything to do with the TV deal. And we talked about this, I think, in the podcast. I want to say we talked about it in the offseason last year. So most of you probably haven't. You probably didn't listen to that or don't remember it. But I was kind of against it because I felt like 17 games didn't make any sense. The 16-game format that they have had since 1976, don't quote me. 78. So since 1978 has been by far the longest stretch in NFL history that they've had one regular season format. That's obviously going to change here in 2021. And the biggest difference to me as a fan, as like just an average Joe, like we all are watching the games, when you say a team wins 10 games, it's a lot different now. 10-7 is a lot different than 10-6. 11-5 is a lot different than 11-6. So that I think is going to be the toughest and weirdest thing to get used to. I also think that the 17 games, Tolly, it's a stopgap, right? We're going to 18.
Oh yeah.
And my main reason for being against expanding to 17 was, first of all, I don't think you need to. It's a little bit greedy. You don't need to do this. If you have a good thing going, don't mess with it. But 17 is just so arbitrary when you have the schedule set up perfectly the way it is now, too. And for those of you that maybe aren't as nerdy into the NFL and football as I am, the schedule is set every year, and it makes a ton of sense. Let's say you're the Green Bay Packers, and let's say you finish first in the division. Well, you'll play your 3 division opponents twice. That's 6 of your 16 games. So you need to fill in 10 other games. And so what you will do is you'll play another NFC division. So that's 4 opponents. And then you'll play an AFC division, and that's 4 opponents. So what am I at now? 11 games, Tolly?
I think
I'm at 14 games. And so then the other 2 NFC divisions, you would play the same team that finished in the same spot that you did. So let's say you're the Packers, and this is the year you play the AFC North, and this is the year you play the NFC South. Well, you'd play all 4 NFC South teams. You'd play all 4 AFC North teams. You'd play the Vikings, Bears, and Lions twice. And then with the remaining NFC divisions that are in your conference, the NFC East in this case, and the NFC West, you would face the other team that finished first if you're the Packers. Like you would face, I guess, what would have been the Washington football team this year. Yeah. And in the West, it would be the Rams.
Right.
So that would be your opponent. So going to this 17-game format totally screws that up. I mean, I do not envy the schedule makers and the people that have to figure out the logistics of all this to make it fair, to figure out tiebreakers.
Well, they already released kind of like, this is who the teams are gonna play. I guess I don't know if they had it figured out ahead of time.
How do you average? So I'd imagine they'd want to keep the format they have as intact as possible.
They pretty much are, and then they're just like adding what seems to be a random game. I guess maybe it's somebody from the other conference that finished first
game,
because the Bills are supposed to play the Washington football team now, I think, in that 17th game.
So to me, this is why I ultimately think we're going to an 18-game season. I would be surprised if we played a 17-game season for longer than 3 years. I think the ultimate goal is to go towards an 18-game season and virtually eliminate the preseason. I think that there will be debates about this. There could be a potential lockout about this when the CBA is up.
Well, Alvin Kamara's quote was, "Shit, dumb as hell."
So, yeah, he's been one of the more outspoken players about it. Aaron Rodgers has been one of the more outspoken players against, the offseason, that sort of thing. The thing is, those guys are stars. They're in the top 2%. Like they're the 1%ers of the league, right? If you relate it back to real life, they are the upper crust of society in the NFL. Does Alvin Kamara need a 17th game? No. Does Aaron Rodgers need a 17th game? No. You know who that 17th game helps? The guy that's making the minimum. The guy that's making $500K as a rookie, trying to stay on the active roster. One more game maybe means an injury, maybe means I get to play, means I stick for longer, means that the league makes more money, which then my minimum salary gets raised. It's not affecting Kamara or Rodgers. They're only seeing the downside of it. But what it helps is basically everybody else. Because when there's more money in the pot, the guys at the bottom, that veteran minimum is going to go up. That rookie minimum is going to go up. They might increase, roster size. There's going to be more opportunities for some of these guys at the bottom of the league to make a name for themselves and make some more money. So
yeah, so they're doing NFC. They're doing NFC versus AFC. So since the Bills won the AFC East and the Washington football team won the NFC East, they're playing together. So whoever won the AFC North, was that the Ravens or the Steelers?
It was the Steelers.
Steelers still won it. So the Packers will play the Steelers in that extra game.
So that's weird. So like that seems very like short-sighted, band-aidy. Like what is that just gonna happen every year?
Now you have an imbalance. I don't know, because you have an imbalance in home and road games now too.
Exactly. So how do you make that even? If I'm playing 8 home games and 9 road games for 3 years in a row, I'm going to be pissed. Which is ultimately, I think, again, we're working towards 18 games.
Yep.
That's absolutely 100% the direction that the league is going in, and that you're going to see it happen. I don't see a world in where we stay at 17 games for the foreseeable future.
It'll just be interesting if they go to that 18th game, if they add a second bye week, which I think they have to.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking, it's so hilarious that you bring this up, Tali, because I'm driving to work today. Literally today, I was thinking about this. I was driving to work today, and I was thinking, if they have an 18-game season, it's getting to the point where it's just too much. Like these college guys play a 12-game season, 13th game for a championship, and then a bowl game. That's 14. If you get to the point where you're playing 16-game regular season plus playoffs, let's say you go to the Super Bowl, you're playing like what, 19 games? So you're up at 20 games now. If
you're a wild card team, you add in that extra one too.
So once you move to 18, think about that.
Yeah.
And if they keep with this expanded playoff format, which I don't know if I like it, I'm fine with it as it is. I don't want it to get any bigger. Right. I already think we have a tough enough time finding enough good football teams to truly play in January and February. Like, I didn't want to see the Washington football team. That game against the Buccaneers, I'm as big a football guy as you will find. I had zero interest in that game. Zero. Yep. Even though Taylor Heineke played well, everybody's like, "Oh, Taylor Heineke, that was such an entertaining." No, it wasn't. Was it in doubt for a second that the Bucs were going to win that game?
I mean, you didn't really want to watch John Wolford against the Packers either.
Well, that's a little bit different though. Like, the Rams were a good team,
except for at that position. Like,
and Wolford didn't even play. It was Goff.
Oh, Wolford was supposed to play. He played their first one, didn't he?
Wolford played the first game against not the Cardinals. That was week 17. He got hurt in week 17, and then he played. No, I'm so ass backwards. He played it. He played and beat the Seahawks.
Okay,
and he got injured in the first quarter of the Seahawks game, and Jared Goff came back in, and they ended up beating the Seahawks, and then they lost to Green Bay. Yeah. Now you got me totally off my train of thought, Nick. So thank you so much for that. But what I was thinking about on the way to work is, if you go to 18 games, you're getting to a point where you're jumping the shark. So you have to have 2 buys. And I think the players maybe the players wouldn't give a shit about that and they'd still be really mad. I feel like that's a pretty nice olive branch, because here's how you could do it. You could do 9-week half seasons. You could even, you could put the Pro Bowl between those and now do a legitimate all-star break like they do in every other major American sport. But you play your first, 9 games. Well, I guess it would be 10 weeks, wouldn't it? Because it'd be 18 games. So you play your first 9 weeks in 10 weeks. You play your first 9 games in 10 weeks. You'd get a bye somewhere in there. And then the next 10 weeks would be the second half of the season. Each team would be guaranteed a bye in the first 10 weeks and the second 10 weeks. And to alleviate people getting screwed with buys, if you didn't do one until like week 4, which I think is how they have it now, I think I did the average. The math would be you'd have about 5 teams on bye every week from week 4 on, which is not that much. You'd be losing out on like 2, 3-ish games. Right. And they have the weeks where they load people up with buys anyways. I think that they could do that. And in fact, I bet that's where we're headed. And the reason I disagreed with it a year ago was because I felt like it was a half measure. If you're going to jump it, if we're inevitably going to 18, stop fiddle fucking around and just jump it to 18 games. I understand that that's probably harder. They didn't have the TV deal at the time. I think they're waiting on the TV deal. But then jump it to 18. The reason they aren't going to jump it to 18 is because the players would really pitch a bitch if that happened. So now we have to do this weird, we're jumping it to 17. Then we have to wait a couple years till everybody gets used to that and forgets about it. No, now we're going to jump it to 18. So I guess I understand the politics of it, but to me, it's just so stupid, such a waste of time and everybody's effort to try to deal with now all the logistical problems that a 17-game season poses. To just we know you want to do 18, just do 18.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my opinion on that. So we can wrap up with that and move on to honestly what I'm most excited to talk about on the show today, which is the draft trades, baby.
Yeah.
We had them in droves this past week. And Tyler, do you get the details? Should I run down them real quick?
Yeah, I've got them. So the big one is that started this was Miami trades number 3 overall pick to San Fran for the number 12 overall pick, a 2022 first round, a 2022 third round, and a 2023 first round. They then flipped the number 12 pick and a fourth round pick with the 2022 first round pick to the Eagles to get
Is
back up
it
to
their
number
own
6.
2022? Correct. It's Miami's 2022 that they're giving up, not San Fran's.
I believe so.
Yeah.
So now the Dolphins moved back up to number 6, and they got a fifth round pick from the Eagles this year.
So to me, there's so much to talk about here, but to me, the first thing that it told me was Miami had the deal worked out with Philly to jump back up from 12 to 6 before they even officially made the trade with the 49ers. Yeah. Second thing it tells me, and probably it ended up being the lead story, Niners are up to 3. It's going to be a QB. And we mentioned this at the end of the regular season. We thought that there could be 4 quarterbacks taken in the first 4 picks. That is about as close to a lock as it's ever going to be. And the reason is there's 100% a quarterback being chosen the first 3 picks. No, do you doubt that? Does anybody doubt that at this point?
See, I don't
honestly think the 49ers traded up for Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts and gave up all that draft capital?
I don't know, because they're saying they're not getting rid of Jimmy G and all this, and I don't know what they're doing.
They're lying to you is what they're doing. Just like Josh Rosen was the number 1 quarterback. They're taking a QB. Now, I have a little insider scoop that I can drop on you in this podcast, what I've been hearing that they're going to do, the quarterback they're going to take with the 3rd overall pick. But before I get to that, I want to talk about the Falcons at 4, because I think they're the team that is most impacted by this. Now, all of a sudden, the Falcons are getting all the calls because the quarterbacks in the first 3, again, about as close to a lock as you can get. It's going to go Trevor Lawrence. It's going to go Zach Wilson or somebody else. Maybe they shock the world and take like Lance or Fields. But then the Niners are going to take a QB, and then it'll be the Falcons at 4. And let's just presume it goes consensus. Let's presume it goes chalk. Let's assume that it goes Lawrence, Wilson, and then the Niners at 3 take Justin Fields. Then you have Trey Lance or Mac Jones even at number 4 if you're the Falcons. And this is why I think it's going to be 4 quarterbacks and 4 picks. If you're not going to take a quarterback there, trade out. You don't pick somebody there. You trade back. You let somebody who needs a quarterback come up, and you make it a bidding war to get to the 4th spot to get that last quarterback. There are going to be teams split on Lance and Jones, and so there are going to be teams that are less willing to come up to get Lance because they might still like Jones or vice versa. So
if you're looking for that team, I'll just run through the top 12 picks right now. It's the Jags, Jets, Niners, Falcons, Bengals, who aren't going to then flip, Dolphins at 6. Then you have Lions, Panthers, Broncos, Cowboys, Giants, Eagles. So I'd look for the Panthers or Broncos to, like, especially the Broncos, if they want someone to try to jump the Panthers, maybe they do get up to that 4 spot.
And I know Carolina wants to move off of Bridgewater. The owner is a new age owner. He wants to get the quarterback. They want to start winning now. I like the new owner. I like his aggressive approach. I understand that Rivera probably wasn't long for the job when the ownership changed, regardless of the coaching quality. It usually doesn't stay that way. And Matt Rule, I think, is a pretty good guy for the job. Regardless, I don't think he wants to wait another year. I think they're going to either take Lance, Joe, like they're getting somebody that they feel could be the quarterback of the future for them. The problem is you got to trade with your division rival to get there. So I don't know if Atlanta's even going to be willing to play ball with them to go from 4 to 8 or vice versa. we've seen divisional trades in the draft before. It's not as, uncommon place as it would be a player trade. That's almost unheard of in the NFL. Like the Bears and the Packers, like to trade players would be it's like oil and water.
Yeah.
But to trade picks, there have been instances of that in the past. And that's not as far out of a concept. I think though, in terms of like, it's not trade swapping third rounders. I'm not coming up to get a safety. I'm not coming up to get a guard. I'm coming up to get a quarterback that's going to play you for the next decade and dominate you is what my hope. So I think that the Falcons, they backed themselves into a tough spot with the Matt Ryan extension. They effectively can't move off of him for 2 years. But if you like Trey Lance and if you like Mac Jones, if you like Justin Fields, whoever falls to you, you can get them and develop that player underneath of Matt Ryan. And, if he takes over, Matt Ryan ends up in a bench role for like half of his second year. It's going to be unpopular. It's going to get a little uncomfortable, like the Eli Manning thing. But like, it's just the reality of the business and football.
Maybe it'll make him retire sooner, and you don't have to pay him as much.
Well, and because Arthur Smith and the Falcons, they don't want to be picking in the top 4 again. When you're up that high, you're not thinking we're going to be back here next year. You're thinking, let's make the most of this now. So I think, have to capitalize on taking that quarterback. I really do think the Falcons are taking a QB, but if they don't, they have to trade it. That's my main point with that from the fallout of this trade, because the Niners are absolutely taking a QB, and the first two, I think, it's all but cemented they're taking a QB. I wasn't totally sold on the Jets moving off of Darnold, but the way the reports are coming out with Zach Wilson and how talented he is, I'd just be really surprised to see the Jets stand pat with a guy who I think is a worse player than, well, I don't know, all 4 of these guys, to be honest with you. So I don't see, if you're the Jets, how you don't move off Darnold.
So here's a quote just a couple hours ago from Kyle Shanahan. He said, "It's accurate. The team is planning to keep Jimmy G, barring being blown away by an offer." Said that he believes it would be hard to find a QB who helps them win right now more than Garoppolo, and excited to have a QB learning behind him. So they are definitely taking a quarterback, and it looks like they're going to plan on having that quarterback sit.
I don't put any stock into them keeping Jimmy G. I think that he's not necessarily lying, but if the Pats come and offer them a trade that they think is fair value, they're going to trade him. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. The 49ers, though, also are not going to just roll out in 2021 with some brand new rookie. They still want to compete. This is a team, remember, that was minutes away from a Super Bowl in the 2019 season. So I think that they're going to roll with Jimmy to start if they don't get blown away. But what the whole reason they're taking a quarterback is because not only is Jimmy not a fit for Shanahan's offense, he is not reliable anymore. He just isn't. I mean, it's sad, but it's true. He just is not a reliable player. And so the Niners then, if you feel like maybe Trey Lance is the guy, you get to who played, FCS football, doesn't have a lot of starts under his belt. Well, that tells you, oh, well, Trey Lance, perfect fit. Like, they'll take him at 3. He can learn behind Jimmy G. He can learn the Shanahan offense, and then they're going to roll year 2. Watch out, baby. But I think the same can be pretty much said about any of the quarterbacks, whether that's Justin Fields, whether that be Mac Jones. And here now is the nugget that I want to drop on you. I have heard from people in the know that it's going to be Mac Jones. I don't know if I believe it. I think it's absolutely crazy. I think it would be an outrageous mistake. As you hear my dog playing with her toy in the background.
I don't think you'd have to go all the way up to 3 to get him. It kind of seems like you'd be overpaying there a little bit.
That feels outrageous to me. Yeah. I mean, it really does. But if Kyle Shanahan feels like that's his QB and that's the guy he wants to run his system, again, I could talk for 20 minutes about how much I hate that idea. I'm just telling you, I don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you what I heard from pretty plugged in guys too. Like Daniel Jeremiah has been hearing that from NFL front office people that Mac Jones, they said they're adamant. It's not maybe finalized yet, but Mac Jones is going to be the guy. So we'll see if they do that and shock the world at number 3. And if they do, I think it's a terrible mistake, regardless of his success. I mean, unless he's like a Hall of Fame level quarterback. But I think that he would have some degree of success in Shanahan's system. But when you look around at Fields, at Lance, at potentially Wilson, if the Jets don't take him, it would be negligible to take Mac Jones when you likely could have had him at 12, or at the very least, then see how it played out on draft night and then trade it up to get him when you felt it was right. Kind of like what the Packers did. They had Jordan Love targeted. They had him circled months before the draft, but they did not. They waited till they felt like they had to go get him to pull the trigger. Now, whether they should have done that or not is a different matter. But if you're Kyle Shanahan and you're drafting a QB, why get up to 3 to draft a guy that was not going to be taken at 3? The draft is all about value. It's not about the players necessarily. It's about the value. You're drafting value. You're drafting best player available. And it's always hilarious to me when everybody says, we don't want to draft for need. We want to draft best player available. Then they get to the draft and it's like they take like a lineman when everybody's screaming for a wideout. And it's like, what in the world? We needed a receiver and you took a safety. What are you doing? It's like best player available. That's what free agency's for. We'll get, some dime a dozen guy to play wideout in case we don't draft a guy. But we're not reaching for a second round wideout in the first. That's how you draft Jalen Reagor in the first round if you're the Philadelphia Eagles instead of drafting somebody else. So
I have a little, I'm not superstitious, but a little stitious nugget for you, especially since you said they might take Mac Jones, and I know your feelings on him. So over the last 10 years, the quarterbacks that were traded up for in the top 3 picks, they are RG3, Goff, Wentz, Trubisky, and Darnold.
Yeah, that's
those are the 5. Yikes. They said cautionary tale for the 49ers.
Cautionary tale. That's in the top, what you say, top 3 or top 5?
Top 3 over the last 10 years. Those are the 5.
You know what's interesting too, and I did the research on this a year or 2 ago, so it might be a little out of date. But about half of first round quarterbacks are traded up for. And if you go back through the last 5 to 10 years, that's basically true. Patrick Mahomes was traded up for. Deshaun Watson was traded up for.
Allen.
Jordan Love, Josh Allen. These were all trades. Lamar Jackson, I believe, was he a trade up for? They picked him 32nd overall.
Yeah.
I think they came up and got him. I'm not totally sure on that.
But they didn't draft him right after the Super Bowl because they won the Super Bowl in Ray Lewis's last year.
No, that was a long ass time ago. Yeah, no, it was Reggie McKenzie's last pick as the general manager before he retired. And I just can't remember. I can't remember if they had that trade before draft night or if they made it then with the Super Bowl champs that year. So, sorry, my dog is really kind of being annoying. But yeah, so half the first round draft choices have been traded up for in recent memory, and it'll be interesting to see if beyond the trade that the 49ers make, if we see that continue. Let's say if they go chalk and take Justin Fields, if then the Falcons trade out and that 4th quarterback gets traded up for, or then if we get 5 in the first round, it feels like Jones is going first round. It feels like you're going to get 5 in the first round no matter what. So for those QBs, then is there going to be any sticking and picking? I always feel like we overestimate the amount of trades, especially last year. I know I did. I thought there'd be a lot of movement, especially at the top, and everybody just kind of hung in there and picked. So we'll see what happens this year. But I mean, the race is on for the QBs, man. And it'll be really interesting to see. I like what the Dolphins are doing. I really do. I don't know why they felt like they needed to come back up to 6. Maybe they just weren't comfortable with the talent gap.
I think they want one
from
of those
3 to 12.
I think they want one of those top 3 wide receivers, and they knew 6 was going to be their only chance to guarantee one.
And why wouldn't they? I think that if you're the Bengals now too, the fact that there's likely going to be 4 quarter, it's possible you're going to get the first position player off the board, so that changes things a little bit. Are you going to go Rashawn Slater or Penei Sewell anymore? I mean, yeah, you got to keep Burrow upright, but it's got to be tough to resist the temptation to draft Jamar Chase and pair those two up again in the pros.
Yeah.
I kind of think if I'm the GM, I'm taking Jamar Chase. Like, I've seen these two together at college. We'll find a tackle. Like, we'll make that work.
I'm
and
sure Joe
Burrow's young and
Burrow is
athletic enough.
I'm sure Joe Burrow is calling him, going like, I don't care. I'll run away from that guy. You get me Jamar Chase.
And you know what else the Bengals, you know what they really should have done? Now in hindsight is 2020, but you know what they should have done? They should have fired Zach Taylor's ass this year.
Yeah.
And they should have hired Joe Brady. And then they should have drafted Jamar Chase. And then here we go. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. The Eagles trade out, and I think they're the big losers in this. What are you doing? What are you doing trading down to 12? Howie said that they felt like comfortable with the talent gap there. How can that be? How can that be? Because let's say even if there's 4 quarterbacks taken in the first 4 picks, then you have Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, the 2 Bama receivers. So that's 4 picks right there. That gets you to 8. Then you have the 2 linemen. That's 9 and 10. That's like, and then you're down to like Patrick Surtain, maybe Micah Parsons, but like that top end, especially offensive talent, the wide receivers in particular, which Philly again really needs, they're gonna be gone. So, you know, especially the offensive lineman too. Like, you could really use an offensive lineman, and they're not going to get any of them now. So I don't know if maybe they'll trade back up, but I don't get trading back to 12 if you're Philadelphia, especially for what they picked up. I guess they picked up Miami's first in 2022, so you get 2 first-round picks next year. And, you know,
and
Miami pick could potentially be high.
They can get a 3rd first-round pick next year from the Carson Wentz trade.
Yeah, so Howie is clearly trying to load up a little bit and try to build the team around Jalen Hurts. But I think his statement of that they feel comfortable with the talent level, there ain't enough blue chip players in the draft, buddy. You're going to get a significantly worse player now that you did that. You were firmly in the mix. I mean, you assured yourself at pick 6 to get one of Jamar Chase, Penei Sewell, Kyle Pitts, which you can't really go wrong with any of those guys. Even if you slid back a little and got Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, I don't think anybody kills him for that. Or you end up with Rashawn Slater, the tackle out of Northwestern, which some guys think is better than Penei Sewell. Like, that's, again, good pick, but all those guys are going to be gone by 12, I think. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do. I mean, they are more than one piece away, so I think you always got to be thinking 3 to 5 years. I mean, what did I say that just a couple weeks ago? So you do have to be thinking more long-term, but they have to nail the picks. They have to nail the picks. It's a lot easier said than done. So I think that'll wrap it up for our show today. Tally, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's it.
Go ahead and call or text us at 904-990-FT50 and drop your question, comment, topic you want us to talk about, and we will get it on the show. Again, that is 904-990-FT50 or 3850. And drop us your comment or question. You can call or text into that number. So we are presented by Bookit Sports, and we are brought to you by Aces Wild in Columbia, Illinois, 208 North Main Street. And we'll see you guys next week.